welcome back to the Freedom Podcast with me, Josh, and we're here with Pastor Dave Thomas. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Hello, mate. Yeah, doing well. You good?
I'm great, thank you, mate. Yes, really
Come
well.
on.
Dave, I understand that you were away last week on a bit of an adventure, a southern adventure in the wild. Tell us a bit about what you got up to last weekend.
Well, I know this won't be everybody's cup of tea, so just warning there. But I went on my very first hunt, Josh,
Man.
Yeah,
what, hunting. You hunting ducks?
No, deer.
Right, okay.
So, but duck season starts next weekend, I think. So I'm getting into this, and I had hoped that we got Thanksgiving here in the US this week, we've got Christmas coming up, both require a turkey. So I was kind of hoping that I would get our Christmas or Thanksgiving turkey, but turkey season doesn't start yet. Didn't know this. But yeah, mate, it's something I've always wanted to do.
And so did you get a deer?
I didn't. But within my group, my team, we got two. We got a buck.
So you were there when it hunted, when it got hunted, when it got terminated.
Yeah. So actually, what happened was we have 4 stands up, and me and 2 others were one side of the farm, and we saw nothing in our stands. Didn't even see a deer. And then
you went hunting. You went up to a stand. But you didn't actually see a deer.
Didn't see a single one. Didn't see a single one.
It's your first hunt.
Yeah. But I, at least, where I feel okay is I can't control that. If we'd seen one and missed, now that would be more like embarrassing. But the boys on the other side of the farm, they were all over there. And so, they managed to get the 2, and there was a few things we had to do afterwards and whatnot, but it was great.
We'll save you the details. Okay. And is it right that you also applied to go and hunt another kind of animal in South Carolina?
Yes, I did. Okay. So again, so this doesn't cause too many issues. All these things are like sanctioned. The populations of these animals need to be managed, et cetera, et cetera. And with things like deer, the meat gets processed and people either eat it themselves or they donate it to charity. So it's good. It's good. But the animal that I really wanted to hunt was, I put my name in for the alligator hunting license.
What do you mean put your name in? It's like, put your name in the ring. Like, what does this mean?
So 1 month a year it's sanctioned in South Carolina because the population has boomed so much in the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so you pay for a lottery ticket, and then your name goes in the barrel digitally, and then you get a lottery ticket, and and I missed out. My name didn't, so I'll have to do it again next year. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not what I was dreaming of. I was dreaming of like diving in and, having to like wrestle the thing down. But that's not how you deal with the issue.
That's not how you deal with it.
Bit different.
I'm seeing you tomorrow and seeing you all the fam, because you guys are coming up, aren't you, to see us in North Carolina? So we're doing Thanksgiving together. It's going to be great to have you guys here.
It's been one of the best things, church planting overseas for the first time. One of the best things having, some of our best friends up the road. So yeah, Thanksgiving. What are you cooking, Josh?
Oh, we got the turkey going. We have got the you're bringing a ham, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then we've got the mac and cheese. We've got the mashed potatoes. But one of the we've got the green bean casserole. Woo! We've also got the stuffing. We've got the sweet potato casserole. And
come on, mate.
This blew my mind when I first came to the United States, because they put sugar into the sweet potato. So obviously it's sweet already, man, but they make it sweeter. And I remember the first time we were over 10 years ago, we were sat at the dinner table and someone ordered the sweet potato and it came loaded. We didn't have any idea what that meant. And it was covered in marshmallows.
Oh my goodness.
You're eating toasted marshmallows on sweet potato. It was completely bizarre. And we couldn't get our head around it. I think it was at a Thanksgiving dinner that we had a few years ago. And my kids went and just kind of they just scraped off the melted marshmallow from the top and just left the sweet potato there. So I don't do the marshmallows. That's too much for me. But we do the brown sugar and pecans.
Mate,
and that is
are you
good.
doing the sweet potato with the chorizo again?
No, I haven't planned to. Do you want that though? Because I can.
But 100%. Yes.
I've forgotten that
I love this
last year.
I love that basically people have tuned in to hear us plan the Thanksgiving menu, but you've got to get excited about it, mate. We had
all right. It's on the menu. We'll make that happen.
That'd be awesome, mate. I cooked some steak last night. It was insane. It was insane.
We really are going off on a tangent now.
We are going on a tangent, but there you go.
This is, even as I was thinking about, though, this week, Dave, and coming towards Thanksgiving, which is obviously a new holiday for us Brits abroad, living here in the States, it was making me think of the fact that this practice of gratitude, it is a great holiday because it's not commercial. I'm not trying to sell you anything apart from lots of food. But what is great about it is this idea of being thankful, being grateful.
Yeah.
And it led me to thinking about joy as well, and how we as people, as Christians, as followers of Jesus, we've got to have this joy is ever present in our lives, not just kind of when we're taking a moment to sit around the table, but that it's with us every day. I'd say, Dave, you are one of the most joyful people I know. What is it, do you think, that is a key or a secret to living with joy?
Oh my goodness. Well, firstly, I'm humbled that you would say that. Hopefully that, I think my wife...
It is true.
Saz might debate that at times.
You're just joyful with me.
Yeah, just joyful with you. No. I think, I guess as a couple and as a family, it's something that we try to practice. And not to jump in with too Christian an answer, but somebody once asked me in an academy session, they said, how are you passionate consistently? And it's kind of, I guess, a similar question. How do you have joy consistently? And I think the first way that I would, I guess, answer that for my life is that what Jesus has done for me is the same every single day of the year, every single minute of my life. The greatest thing that has ever happened to me, ever happened for me, ever has already happened. Don't get me wrong. Our wedding day, phenomenal. Having our kids, amazing. Great ministry moments. Buying our first, all these great things. But the hands down greatest, most awesome thing that has ever happened to me, for me, anything has already happened. And I think that I've tried to make that a daily thought. And I try to remember that actually the greatest thing I could ever ask for, the greatest thing I could ever need has already been given to me. And I think when I establish that kind of theology, and I know like we talk about theology as if they're like theoretical beliefs, when that kind of got established in me, that became the foundation of being able to have joy and have gratitude and have passion and have thankfulness. Because when that's true, that truth has the power to give us choices in how we respond to the tough things that come, So when that is true, and that's like the bedrock of who you are, it becomes the rock upon which you can stand. You guys are just starting a new series in Raleigh. What's it called? Life on the Rock, House on the Rock?
House on the Rock.
House on the Rock, And, we read that Jesus says it in, Sermon on the Mount, if you build your life on my teachings, like building your life on a rock rather than on stand. And I think that's one of the rocks that it's like, okay, the greatest thing that's ever happened for me or to me has already happened. I stand on that every single day. When the bills come in, and there's other things, and we can get into that. There's some things that Saz and I guess we've practiced, but I think it starts there. And because it gives you something to be thankful for and grateful for every single day of the week, every minute of the day kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. What do you think the difference is between happiness and joy?
Ooh, that's a really good question. What do I think the difference is? I think joy is something deeper than being happy. I think there's a depth to joy. I think joy is a choice. Happiness is a feeling. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with happiness. There's nothing wrong with happiness. But I think happiness is the fruit of something else. Joy can actually be the root of something. It can actually be the root of who you are.
I agree. I agree, because I don't think we're expecting anybody to have to be constantly be happy, but to be
Yeah,
joyful, you can actually have joy in all circumstances, in all
that's
seasons.
so good.
That the joy of the Lord is our strength, because it comes from this deep well within us, doesn't it? It comes from our relationship. It comes from with God. It comes from our salvation, and there is always something to lean into from that strength and that celebration of that truth. It doesn't mean our circumstances are necessarily happy, but that joy actually gives us a strength there that sustains us.
Mate, I think it's a fantastic distinction you're making there. And I think we have a problem in our world because culture, media, is pushing us to pursue happiness. But actually, we need to pursue joy. We need to pursue gratitude and thankfulness and joy. We will enjoy happiness, and that's great. But actually, I think you're right. Is you can actually be joyful, but it not be happy. We've had the privilege, haven't we, Josh, of traveling to different parts of the world, and it's always wildly challenging when you go to a part of the world where perhaps through circumstances and situations, economics, different things like that, people don't have the things that in perhaps where we're from would define or make you happy. And yet so often there's a deeper joy. There's a deeper thankfulness. There's a deeper gratitude. I think the problem with happiness is it's almost like the carrot on the stick. It's never enough. Take another bite, pursue a life of happiness, the endless pursuit of happiness. That's the problem. It's endless. Joy can actually be satisfying in the moment. It's actually joy gives you peace. Happiness ends up like pursuing happiness will make you just want more. You just want more. You just want more. And whereas actually when you have that bedrock of joy, it actually creates peace within you. When you can find, if it says, what's it say in scripture? It says, count it as pure joy, therefore, when you face persecutions and trials of many kinds.
Yeah.
You're talking about a paradox of events there. When you're like, you can find a rooted joy, a spiritual joy like that, it actually settles you and there's peace. We had a situation recently, just a practical circumstance where over the course of about 2-3 days, there were 3 different things that came that had quite significant impact on our situation in different ways. If I was pursuing happiness, I would have been a mess. But do you know what? We pursued joy in it, and we were able to be grounded and again, peaceful about it. I was talking with my neighbor recently, and we were talking about something, and he'd had something go on. It was a house commitment, and it ended up costing more money than he had planned. And I said, hey, but isn't it great that you have the privilege of that problem? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you wouldn't have that problem if you didn't own that house, would you? And he was like, that's a really different way of looking at it. Actually, it's like, and I think that's the difference of joy and happiness. It's like, I can take joy in the fact that I've got this blessing, even though perhaps that burden isn't there, So
yeah, definitely. And I think that there's something around joy, taking responsibility for it. And when something is your responsibility, then it means that you can do something about it. But when you think that joy comes from an outside place, then you're disempowered to change in the way that you feel. Because if your joy is someone else's job, then it means that you're waiting for some of that outside factor to change. And then we put blame and we put responsibility on those sources not providing the joy that we need. But when we realize and we get this understanding that joy comes from within us, it comes from the Spirit of God within us, it comes from our relationship with God, and that it's our responsibility to choose joy. Even in those verses you just shared from James 1 there, it says, consider it joy. It's like, it's not saying, it is joyful when you go through trials. It's like, it's all about your perspective. Like shift the way that you see something. Do you see something for negative? Do you see something for in a cynical way? Or do you see something and consider it joy? Even when you're going through trials, even when you're going through difficult things, it's all about how we shift and we look at something. And I think that it's so empowering to us when we get this truth, because then if we're struggling with feeling low, or we're struggling with going through something, it's not just then waiting for those outside circumstances to change.
Yeah.
You know, one of the book of Philippians is known as the happy book, because it's full of these exaltations and it's full of these amazing scriptures, like whatever you do, you know, do it in love. It's just these amazing scriptures that just pour out from Paul. He's writing it in a prison.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, it's
you've got no
Josh.
right to be thinking in that way in worldly terms. But Paul hasn't found his joy in his circumstances. He's found it in Jesus. He knows that the well is within. It's not from the outside source. And so if we can all access that well within, then we can all have joy at all times in any circumstance, rather than thinking, well, I'm struggling with this at the moment, or this is going on at work, or this is going on with my friendship group, or this is going on with my health. All of these things, if we're putting our joy in those things, what can happen then is that we're then discouraged when those outside sources don't give us what we're looking for. But that's a lie. It's not actually from those things. It's from that relationship within. It's from Jesus.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I think, you know, I love what you're saying there, that the responsibility actually is empowerment rather than, you know, oh, I've got to. It's no, you get to. One of the things, and again, I'm not going to kind of go off on too much of a tangent here, but one of the things we don't talk a lot about, I think, in modern culture is the fact that we don't talk a lot about eternity. We don't talk a lot about heaven. And, you know, and
True.
In some sense, like I do love the fact that we teach a lot about, you know, grounded in the here and now. One of the things that I think marked Paul was that he had this eternal hope. He had this eternal perspective. He knew his situation in prison wasn't actually his eternal reality. And, you know, when it talks about the joy of the Lord, it's actually the joy of what will be, not what is. The joy of what is certain to come, not the joy of what I'm enduring now. Even I just think it's amazing. It says in scripture of Jesus, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. So even Jesus, when we look at what sustained him
so good
through the like brutal beatings, the piercing on the cross, the separation from the Heavenly Father, the weight of every single human being's sin in all of, you know, creation, what endured, the joy set before him. He was like, you know, in that moment that he's bleeding and he's crying and he's mourning and he's going through all that stuff. But then he's thinking about, I'm going to dance in heaven with Dave. This is going to be worth it. I'm going to celebrate in heaven with Josh. This is going to be worth it. I'm going to be, and I think we are, this whole pursuit of happiness, it's often connected to material things. It's often connected to immediate satisfaction, immediate gratification. And again, that doesn't mean all those things are wrong. But when we look into an eternal satisfaction, an eternal gratification, I think that's what can mean that we can sort of step into it. And it's counterculture, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah,
you know, when you meet people like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it helps you stand out. And even I was thinking about things that can rob your joy, because I know lots of Christians, Dave, that don't live like this, where it's that they're not walking in this joy that Jesus has promised us. Why is that? What can rob away your joy? I think one of the things for me is complaining. And when in Philippians 2 verses 14 to 15, again, Paul's writing this from the prison, and he says, do everything without complaining or arguing.
Wow.
And that's a challenge, isn't it? It's a challenge. But I think that when we complain, we're seeing the negative perspective of a situation. We're allowing ourselves to grumble. We're allowing ourselves to indulge in those feelings that actually rob away our joy. They're there to come and steal from you, to take your joy from you, and you give it away. And it's like we've got a choice in these moments. Do we start to use our tongue to complain, or do we
That's
use
good.
our tongue to still speak out the things that we're grateful for, still speak out the things that we're joyful for? Those things will protect our joy. But if we allow ourselves to become critical, to start to complain, you show me a person that is a complainer and that they're joyful. They don't exist. If you allow yourself to moan, to complain, to criticize, I will show you an unjoyful person. There is something about the life, it steals away from you, and you've got to guard your heart, guard your tongue, so that you don't start to indulge in this complaint and criticism, because it will take away the joy that God's promised you.
Yeah, mate, it's so true. It's so true. And I think one of the things, even as we're coming up to Thanksgiving here, it's a lot harder to resist complaining if you don't practice gratitude. I think like one of the things that I love about some of the cultural things here is the continued practice of gratitude and the practice of honoring in certain things that I think we do less in the UK. And again, I'm not saying it's all sorted here, because it's not, but when you come into a different culture, you notice things. And I was just thinking generally, it's easier to resist complaining when you're actually practicing thankfulness. So even like grace around the table, thanking God for food. One of the things that I've been quite blown away by recently is, we do a click and collect, and, it'll arrive, we'll go pick it up from the supermarket, we'll arrive and the fridge is full. And I've just started to just make a point of just saying, Jesus, thank you so much, because it's simple, but it's like, he didn't need to fill up that fridge. He didn't need to do that. When we come up and see you guys, I think practicing gratitude is one of the best ways. One of the things I think kills joy, mate, is and whatnot. You've got obviously, complaining, but I also think one is comparison. It's like, when you're constantly looking at what somebody else has. Well, you get it in, don't covet your neighbor, what your neighbor has. Don't covet. It's like, God knew what he was talking about. We've got all these like self-help books and stuff like this. God's been saying it to humanity for thousands of years. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, and strength. Be grateful, thankful for him. Love your neighbor as yourself. Don't covet what they have. Don't want what they've got. Celebrate what they've got. Maybe even be inspired by what they've got. Maybe even go and work a bit harder to go and get something that is a right thing to pursue. But when we look over the fence in whatever that way is and we compare, I think it's very hard to stay grateful. It's therefore you become complaining, and therefore it's this, and it becomes that carrot again. And, I'm chasing the next thing, and I'm chasing the next thing, and I'm chasing the next thing.
Yeah. For sure. I think one of the things as well, Dave, that people who don't walk in joy, one of the things that I'd say that they perhaps struggle with is that they are too absorbed by the present. And I think that even like what you were saying about looking ahead to the future and knowing that we're going to eternity, that we are secure, our name is written in the book of life, that we can look to the future, but also that we look to our past. And I think that people who have lost their joy, they so quickly forget what God has done, how he's blessed them, how he's made a way for them, how he broke through, how he brought provision into their lives. And all of a sudden they're consumed about their present. They can't see what God did last month or a few months ago. They can't see ahead to what he has next. They're just consumed with maybe the difficulty that they're in right now. And I think that to be a person of joy, you've got to be living in those three dimensions. You've got to look behind you, see all that God did, and
Josh.
keep being grateful for that. Keep honoring him, keep praising him. Remember where you came from. If you can do those things, then you look ahead to your future, where you're calling, that heaven is our home. If you can look to those things, and not only in your present, that's going to protect your joy. And I think of the Israelites being brought out of Egypt, and as they were brought out, They have broken free of slavery. The Egyptians have literally given them gold as they're walking out of the place. It's this incredible blessing that happens and that they walk into. But instead of practicing and celebrating that, they then start saying, well, the food's not the same out here. I'm missing some of the things from Egypt. Hey, you were in slavery, but all of a sudden you've been consumed by your present because of your hungry tummy in that moment.
Yeah.
Because you're missing something in that moment. You're forgetting the past behind you of what God just did and causing it to complain, and then you've lost your joy. And so I want to encourage people listening to this. You've got to practice looking behind you. You've got to practice looking ahead of you and not just be absorbed within the moment that you're in right now.
Mate, I think it's fantastic. One little suggestion for the families listening: do this around the dinner table.
Yeah,
do it around the dinner table. What are we thankful for this? This week, kids. What are we believing for? But what are you grateful for? What's God done? I think if we teach it around our dinner table, and in those other places, I think it's so good. I've got a question for you, Josh. Because I know that one of the things that contended for my joy and has contended for my joy at different seasons is being a relatively intense character and struggling to switch off. And I'm not saying you're not intense, because you are, but you have a far better ability to switch off. And, one of the things, even 10, 12 years ago, I remember having a conscious conversation with you about like learning to switch off and learning to rest and learning to enjoy. I think Saz and I looked at you and Rose, and one of the things we admired in you guys as a couple in that season is that it's not that you weren't living purposefully. Oh my goodness, heck. But you lived with a different level of you weren't as intense all the time as we were. And we tried to learn to model that. How I think that's something that robs a lot of people's joy, is constantly being on, not learning to switch off, not learning to enjoy the moment. I think you're very good at that. And I still look at you to learn from that. How do you do that? Some of it's personality, disposition, but how do you do that? How do we learn to switch off,
Yeah, I think it's, for me, reading the moment and knowing who to be in that moment in the situation. And what I mean by that is, if I am in a setting of leadership, then I'm going to go and lead. If I'm in a setting of friendship, I want to be having some fun with my friends. And I think it's like switching between those different roles of who I am. That I'm a friend, I'm a brother, I'm a leader, I'm an authoritative figure, but I'm not all of those things at once. Usually it's I am right within this moment. I'm having to lead and I'm having to step up and turn up my intensity intentionally in that. In other moments, I am going to come alongside and make the most of this setting that we're having, where we're, throwing a football round together, or we are, very American. But that was my morning on Saturday. It was great fun. And I think it's knowing about where to switch into in those settings and being appropriate in that. And I've definitely led some people over the years where I've tried to encourage them to be more conscious and aware of that, is that just because you're a leader doesn't mean then that you have to constantly be in that posture at all times in all settings. And of course, we're aware of our leadership mantle that's on us and the way that people are going to look to us. But I always, again, look to Jesus and his example of this, where he was friend of sinners, not just the Lord and Savior. He was also like the friend, and he would call the disciples brothers. He would cook for them and walk with them, go fishing with them. And I think that that's what also I want to reflect into my life as well, is that I can seize the joy in those moments, all that come my way. I think one of the biggest things for me as well is trying to make things happen, whether that's within our marriage, like going and seizing hold of that night to go out together and go out for a date, or whether that's to take some time with my kids and seize that moment there, or to go and plan something with my friends, like a crazy adventure off to the Grand Canyon, where we're going to go and like walk all the way to the base of the Grand Canyon and back out again in one day. Like, we're going to do something. I'm going to try and seize hold of moments to live to the full. And I think that's one of the things is intentionality.
Mate, I think that's such a spot on thing, and something I look in you do seize the moments. I think you know, whether that is the big trip to the Grand Canyon or just enjoying the moment it is. We go camping, and Josh will always be going off for the sunset. I'm going to take this moment. I'm going to go enjoy it. And I love that about you. And that, I found that challenging, because my disposition, which I don't think is my natural disposition, I think it's, at times a sin-based one and an insecurity-based one, is, well, no, I've got to do these things first. And actually learning to just stop. You don't have to do those first. Enjoy this moment, take this moment, seize this moment, be present in this moment. And I think the reason why I just want to, dig into that, Josh, is because I think it's the difference about being a victim in life, or actually leading your own life. And I think a lot of us are robbed in our joy because we're allowing ourselves to be victims in our own lives. And I'm not trying to suggest that all of our circumstances are easy. Some of us are facing some deeply, deeply challenging situations. But I think that we've all got to find a way to take hold of something, whether it's one night a week. G&H have talked about it so many times in the early years of church planting, very limited team, no resource, no money, doing a job, 5. And so what they said is, okay, all other parts of our life might steer us, they might control us, they might demand us, but one night a week, we're in charge of ourselves and we're having a date night. And I know it was more than that, but I just think it's very hard to be joyful when you feel a constant victim, when you're a victim to the to-do list, when you're a victim to the thing, when you're at the beck and call of more of this, and more of this. I think even for me, it's been so healing in this last season, stepping out of my historic role, coming over here, not being able to be involved in things the same way. Like the charge this year, I loved it because I actually had less to do. And I know that sounds like a silly thing to say, because I enjoy being busy. I enjoyed and was more present with people. And there's a time to work hard. I just think there are going to be a number of us that probably the last time, you're hearing Josh say, went to the ground, I could never do that, would never have the time, I think we probably could all do a lot more than we think we can if we're not victims. And I wrestle with that. So I'm sharing that from a testimony. And if you're like me in it, I just encourage you, what's one thing you can take hold of? If you're like, we really need to go and have date night together, don't wait a month, do it tomorrow. We haven't got a babysitter, find one. Can't afford it, don't spend money, just go and have some time, whatever. Because if you're not a victim, it's going to be so much easier to enjoy and take joy in those things as well.
Definitely. And I think as we finish up now, one of the things I would just finish with is that this idea that the key to joy does not lie outside of yourself. When you believe that, you are disempowered. And I just want to come back to that as we close up, because I want every person to know that you don't have to wait for something outside of you to change. It's all within you. Go take it to God. Go make some choices. Go fix your disposition on Him and the fact that we've got so much to be grateful for. God has been so kind, so generous, so good to us that there's always something to feel joyful about. So guys, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you soon.